Welcome to the Transform Your Relationship podcast, where we'll go beyond the typical relationship advice. I'm your host, Manisha Terry, somatic healing practitioner and mentor. Each week, I'll share personal insights, client success stories, and how my holistic trauma-informed approach can help you transform your relationship from the inside out. You'll learn ways to recognize and prioritize your needs, get to the root of what's upsetting you, and courageously ask for what you want so you can confidently co-create the relationship you desire. You'll also hear from guest experts who will be invited to share their unique approaches to transformation, and at the end of each episode, you'll receive one tangible practice you can implement right away to transform your relationship. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Transform Your Relationship podcast. I'm your host, Manisha Terry. I'm happy to be here with you again. It really feels like it's been definitely more than a month since I've done a solo episode, and we are in February of 2023, and it definitely feels like it's been moving quickly. So I hope that you are all well. I live in the northeast of the United States, and we have been having some very strange weather, going from really, really warm to freezing temperatures. So I will be honest, I don't love the fluctuations. I'm okay with it being winter and staying winter for a while, but that is not what's happening. And really also looking forward to when spring is going to come. So however it is where you are, I hope that you are doing well, and it is still the beginning of the year. So maybe you've set some intentions or you've got some goals and you're moving through them. And again, technically still winter. So if you still haven't felt that full momentum, just know that our body needs rest in winter. And I will not go down that side tangent, although I'm like a very, very big fan of rest and following our own internal rhythms and the seasons. And I actually really believe that when we do that, when we give ourselves the rest in the cycle that we need it really is supporting our nervous system 100%. And it allows us to show up better for ourselves in our relationships, all the things. So that's not what we're going to talk about today, but that is always something that I am sharing with clients and sharing in different ways, because really our inner sense of being is what impacts our perceptions and how we engage in the world, and really has a massive impact on our relationships. So that's the topic for another time. But today, what we're going to be chatting about is this feeling of like hesitation, or maybe stalling or avoiding having a conversation in a significant relationship, whether it's with your partner, with a family member, maybe a colleague, where you're not saying what you really want to say. And we're going to get into this a little bit more. Sometimes we don't always know exactly what we want to say, so that can certainly be a factor. And other times we know exactly how we're feeling, what we want to say, and we can't bring that forward for different reasons. So we're going to unpack that a little bit today. And one of the reasons I'm spending a little time on this to unpack it is because I have experienced, and I have also seen and witnessed, when we hold things in and when we don't work them through ourselves and get to the point, if it's necessary, to speak them out loud. That's not always the case. It doesn't always need to happen. But when we're in this place where it does need to be spoken out loud and we're not saying anything, I have seen this create a lot of challenges in terms of people feeling anxious, people feeling overwhelmed, other issues like, stomach issues, headaches, like other things that just show up in people's bodies because we hold stress and we hold tension. And depending on who you are and how you're made up, like it will show up in different ways. And so this is all anecdotal. And I've certainly experienced this. I've had clients who've experienced this. And what's really interesting, just on that note, is when we work through some of these emotional challenges or communication issues, or really just feeling like they're processing their emotions, some of that pain will go away. And I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation. However, we know that stress impacts our body. We have like high cortisol levels when we're stressed. When we have high cortisol levels at over a certain amount of time, there's going to be some impact on our body, whether it is in our musculoskeletal system, whether it's in our digestive system, whether maybe we're getting sick a little bit more often. It will impact your body in some way. Especially, I find, again, totally anecdotal, I find this is more true when we have a highly sensitive nervous system. And my body has actually given me so much information over time, over the years, when there's something going on that maybe I haven't fully realized, but then my body keeps giving me these signals and of like tension or stress or just feeling, anxious or overwhelmed. And when I really sit with those things, it is so amazing what can be revealed underneath. And I see this over and over again with clients. So just to go back to the topic, we're going to explore what is going on when maybe we're avoiding having a conversation, or we're delaying it, or we're stalling, and really how that impacts our relationship dynamics, also how it impacts us, and what might be going on underneath that, and what we can actually do to move us through whatever is going on so that we can say what we're feeling, express that, and do it in a way that feels safe to us, and just recognizing that it's a process. So as I started to mention in the beginning, one of the reasons this may be happening is because you're not really clear on how you feel. And if that's the case, then this is completely fair place to be in, right? It's really probably not the best idea to speak up or say something where it's coming from a place of your own confusion. You're not really clear on like how you feel or what you want, and you want to be able to sort through some of that before you say anything, before you say it in a way that you're going to regret, that you have to clean things up, or it's very much leading from this place of high emotions. And I've shared about this in an earlier podcast around what's the energy behind your words. But when we're leading with so much emotion, when we're sharing something, it can be really difficult for the person to get what we're saying because they feel so much of that emotion. And just to be clear, I love emotions. I'm definitely not saying there's anything wrong with being emotional or having emotions or having big feelings. I have all of these things. However, when I'm communicating with people, I really do my own internal work to get to a place where I have like some semblance of, what do I think about this? What do I want the other person to know about this? How can I say this in a way that makes sense? And I have like processed my feelings around it so that when I can share it, sure, certainly some feelings will come through. Being a human, that will happen. However, you're really leading with just a lot more clear energy. And I find that for communication, that is incredibly important. So yeah, when we're starting from a place where we're not super clear, then think about what are the ways that I can get clear about this? Can I write about it? Can I talk to someone about it? Can I do some movement? Can I go for a run? Can I clear my mind? Can I get to a place where I'm feeling a little bit more clear about how I'm feeling? And then I can say what I need to say. So it may be as simple as that, right? What can also be happening is that you actually are clear. Like you do know what you need or what you want in that moment, but you haven't been able to figure out the right way to say it. Maybe you're concerned about how the person will react. Maybe they'll get defensive. Maybe they'll get upset. Maybe they'll be mad at you. Maybe they'll call you selfish, or all of these whole host of things. I mean, I can't possibly go through the range of all of the things we feel as humans, like when we're about to express ourselves. There can be lots of thoughts and ideas about what might come back. And I'm just going to share a quick example with you. So say you have a family trip planned, and as part of this trip, you're going to be spending some time with your extended family, your partner's family. And while there's this part of you that is definitely looking forward to it and you know it will overall be good, you're a little bit concerned about the amount of time. Maybe it's just a couple days over what your threshold is. And it's not because there's any one or anything that's wrong or bad. You might just have some different needs that you know about, where you need extra quiet or you need more space. And you just know that, when you're on a trip, things are different. It just doesn't happen in the same way. And so one is, oh, okay, I know this about myself. Like, I know this was probably going to put me a little bit on the edge. And is there something I can do about it? And so, I think that in some cases, someone would just not say anything and they would say, like, this is my issue. I'm just going to have to work it out. Everyone else will be disappointed or they'll be upset. So I'm just going to figure this out and do it myself, which sometimes we just have to find workarounds for things, right? When we're looking at the big picture of something. And so absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, if you notice that in your life, when stuff like this comes up, if you're always defaulting to, well, I'll just figure it out. I'm not going to mention it to anybody. I'm going to just do the things I need to do to like push through it. And, if I'm feeling however I'm feeling on the other side, then I will deal with it. If you notice that that is what you always do, then this could be really an opportunity for you to take a pause and at least express what you need, right? To your partner or to another person that's like significant in this situation and say, hey, what would it look like if we did something different? This is what is coming up for me. And while, you can be listening to this and think, oh, yeah, well, that sounds like all well and good, but you don't know how this person's going to react. It's going to be a mess. They're going to be upset. They're going to like hold a grudge. They're going to bring it up later, all of which I completely can understand will happen. So in that case, what people often do is say, it's just not worth it. It is like not worth it for me to say anything. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and keep it moving and carry on. And again, while I am 100% on board with sometimes we just need workarounds, we can't fight every battle. Like it's just doesn't work that way. It's all fine when we're in larger relationships and family dynamics, all of these things. Sometimes we just have to like figure out how to make it work and keep the peace. And there's really nothing wrong with that. It's just when it is always happening that way and simultaneously you're really noticing you're frustrated. There's resentment building up. Maybe you actually are not feeling well. Like you might actually be having these other symptoms of like just feeling really anxious or other things that are coming up that are really impacting your ability to just be there, have a good time, enjoy the people around you, be in relationships that feel good. There's just a lot of anxiety that you're sitting with in order to accommodate somebody else, or you haven't really given anybody the chance to make an accommodation for you. And that can be something else to look at as well and be curious and wonder, well, these people care about me. If I share this with them, maybe we can figure something out. Maybe it can be different, or maybe one person in the larger dynamic can get on board and help you figure something out. So I'm sharing these like different scenarios because one, I think it's just important, again, to recognize, this isn't about constantly just doing what you want and because I think a lot of times people can think about this and say, well, it's, I can just live with this, not a big deal. But what I'm really inviting you to look at is a larger pattern around this, to notice if you're doing this all the time and how is it affecting you in the long run? And can you get a little curious in terms of maybe why is it difficult to say something or speak up? And how can you determine or discern when it makes sense to kind of find your own workaround and when it makes sense to actually say something, because that is actually what's going to make the relationship stronger, because both people in that relationship are actually speaking up, having a conversation, maybe negotiating, and that relationship gets to be stronger because everybody's being seen and heard. And that can be a difficult place to get to. You might have had experiences in your life where no one's really offered that to you. Perhaps you've tried to speak up in the past and you were not listened to, or you were yelled at, or you were put down, or you were shamed. And these are the types of experiences that can stay with us, like when we've had them at, really, important parts or times in our lives where we will internalize them. And if you listen to this podcast in the past, you know that I work with highly sensitive people. I have a highly sensitive nervous system. I have really found that over time, when I've had experiences or when I've remembered back to certain experiences, I can see that I took them in much more deeply than maybe somebody else would have who doesn't have my makeup, who doesn't have that highly sensitive nervous system. And so a lot of times when we're highly sensitive, these experiences stick with us in a different way. They're sort of sitting in our body. And so that, fear of disappointing somebody or maybe hurting their feelings, or somebody maybe called you selfish at one point and now you're saying something similar again to a totally different person, but your body's remembering, oh my gosh, this happened to me before. And even though your mind can tell you, well, this is a totally different person and it's not going to be the same, and I need to give them a chance and see what it feels like. And your body might contract. It might get really locked down. And this is why sometimes we can avoid things for a long time, hesitate, stall. It looks like maybe we're making excuses, or we're just procrastinating, or we are not strong enough. We might tell ourselves these stories about ourselves around what's happening. But I would really invite you to notice what's actually happening in my body when I try to do this. And our minds, you can certainly push through things mentally. However, in my personal experience and what I've seen is when we do that, sometimes our bodies will react. They'll kind of reject it in different ways, and it will really, really stress us out. And so my way is often to pause and work with what's happening in my body first, and then get my mind on board also. And we work together. I try to really get my mind and body on the same page so that I can move forward in a way where I'm not completely stressing my body out so much that it just feels completely overwhelmed. So hopefully, if you are a sensitive person and you're noticing this within yourself, one, just, really give yourself some grace around it, and recognize that, oh, okay, maybe it's just so internalized in me that it's just been really difficult to push through that. And I can't just use my mind to push through it. I really do need to pause and sit and work with my body a little bit. The other thing I would invite you to look at is, how is this impacting your relationships? So we focus on relationships here. And sometimes when we are accommodating for people, or maybe not speaking up, it might work for the greater good of a particular relationship, certainly. So this is not to say you have to do this for everything. However, when you're in relationship, especially when you're in a partnership and you notice that there's this dynamic going on where it's really even difficult for you to express what you need, to a primary partner, there's something going on there where over time, it's probably not going to feel great because it doesn't really feel like a partnership. And that's what most people want to feel, this give and take, this back and forth. I talk to clients about the equality of it. And, I think that equality is a bit of a myth in that way. I think there can be equity, right? People will pull their weight in different ways at different times. And that's what makes sense for the relationship, versus everything has to be equal, because we're humans and it's real life, and it just doesn't work that way. However, when you're in conversation, when you're having these discussions around making plans or saying what you each need in a different situation, if you're not able to do that, then, let's just get curious. Can you be willing in those moments, if you resonate with this, can you be willing in those moments to start to dig a little bit deeper, get a little bit curious, and even just ask yourself, I wonder what's making me hesitate here? Why don't I want to say what I'm feeling and thinking in this moment. So typically on this podcast, I give you a little suggestion towards the end, a little bit of homework, but I am going to sprinkle a few questions in here. So if you are in a place where you want to take a note, write it down, put it in your phone, if this is something you're working with, then, please go ahead and do that. So some of the questions you might ask yourself in that moment of hesitation is, what am I afraid will happen if I speak up? So I'll repeat that again. What am I afraid will happen if I speak up? And then additionally, you may also ask yourself, what am I afraid won't happen if I speak up? It's really interesting to ask ourselves these questions because so many things can start to arise in our minds. Like if I speak up, for example, will someone be upset with me? Will they be disappointed? Will they think about me in a certain way that is unflattering? And then what am I afraid won't happen? Will they just ignore me? Like, will they not listen? Like, will they not acknowledge it? And then how does that make us feel, right? So there's so many reasons why it completely makes sense that we would avoid certain things because they might hurt our feelings. If we say something and we don't get the response that we want, we might really deeply feel that, oh, someone's not listening to me, or I don't feel heard, or I don't feel seen. And this can really reflect some of like the earliest core issues or core wounds that we might have that we're navigating in our lives. And there's, again, nothing wrong with that. We all have something that we're navigating in our lives. So when we're in a position where we are asking for a need to be met and we're nervous about what will happen on the other side, that can really touch into some of those core places. And that's why it can feel so understandably scary. And I just shared a few examples of things that I see coming up over and over again for clients. They might resonate for you. There might be something completely different that comes up for you. I would invite you to maybe write about it, just journal around this and really do some free writing. Don't try to come to a conclusion. Just notice what comes up. If you're not really a writer and you're more of a talker, maybe you talk to a trusted friend, or maybe you're working with a practitioner. You might even open up your voice notes app and start talking in there and like listen back and see what you notice. It's really interesting for different types of people, like how they process. You might be a person who processes out loud, but you might not feel comfortable sharing this specifically with somebody. So you can just speak it out loud, record it, listen back and see what comes forward. And depending on where you're at with this larger situation, that might be enough for you. You might get some clarity around it and you might notice what it's related to. Maybe this is something you've worked on before in the past through like therapy or coaching or something, and you're making that connection, and that connection allows you to move forward and say what you want to say, speak up, etc. For other folks, like the highly sensitive people, like myself, that might not be enough because, again, if it's like sitting in your body and the fear comes up in the moment when you're about to say something and it's really hard for your mind to override that, then the work really is to be with your body and start to notice. So what that might look like, for example, is perhaps you've had an experience where you tried to say something and it didn't quite come out, or it came out a little weird, or you just noticed that you kind of contracted or you shut down and then you just didn't say anything and you moved on. Later, not in that moment that this is happening, but later, what you can do is sit or take a walk or however it is that you process and really take some breaths, notice what's happening in your body, and then ask yourself, like, oh, what was going on for me there? Like, what do I notice in my body when I remember that moment where I tried to say something and it didn't come out? And really pay attention. I mean, if you're able to sit and that doesn't create anxiety for you, I would encourage you to sit and be with the sensations. A lot of times people will notice contractions in different parts of their body, whether it's their throat or their stomach or their belly, or a variety of things will happen. And it's really just about being with those and seeing if there's any insights really that your body's telling you, right? Because our minds are very smart and they can also make up a lot of stories, and they can make up stories that aren't necessarily true. So when you learn to communicate with your body, that's where I believe that you can get the greatest wisdom. And what I see consistently over time is this is such a shortcut to understanding for me, like, oh, what am I really afraid of, or what's really upsetting me? And when I take clients through this process, it's remarkable, like how they can get to this place of clarity so much quicker. And I'm not necessarily saying, oh, faster is better, but what I'm suggesting is that our minds can really take us on a little bit of a ride. And so when we learn the tools to drop into our body, whether it's like with a practitioner at first and we learn those skills on our own and can do it, we can really shortcut a lot of the stories that our mind wants to tell us and like get to this place of clarity and then be able to sit with our maybe anxious nervous system and notice what's arising, but also learn the tools to calm ourselves down at the same time. So we're really like playing this dance of noticing, oh, what's coming up? Okay, this is making me feel a certain way. Can I sit with it? Can I breathe with it? Can I put my hand on a certain place of my body? Can I really help myself come to a little bit more of a neutral place, even at the same time as I'm feeling a little bit emotionally charged? It's such a dance, but that's really what changes like that emotional charge over time. And then you're not always playing with your mind having to override your body because your body has shifted. And this is a practice that I do personally all the time when I'm noticing certain reactions coming up. And this is the process that I will take clients through because it really does help them come to a place of clarity. And it simply, it feels safer when you're doing it with somebody. And I don't mean to say safe that it's unsafe necessarily for you to do on your own. If you are brand new to this and you've never done this before and the thing that you're struggling with or grappling with feels completely overwhelming, then I would say please, find a practitioner, a therapist, some other kind of, healer or somebody to help you, because it can feel very grounding when you're in the presence of somebody who's there really. Their whole job is there to support you and to help you feel grounded. And you'll know whether this is something you feel like okay to do on your own, or if initially you're going to need some help. And we all need that. There's nothing wrong with that, because this work is really about like building these skill sets around noticing our emotions, like feeling our way through, like having these big feelings and being able to process them and feeling okay that we are able to feel so much, but then also at the same time, like figuring out what helps us stay grounded. So a part of us might be feeling overwhelmed with emotion, and then we can also connect to the part of us that feels grounded, and we can start to find that middle place so that we can work through whatever is coming up and get to this place of clarity and being able to express ourselves, to these important people in our lives. Because ultimately, if you are in a relationship and you feel like you're struggling in that, and part of it feels that it's because you just feel so much and you really can't get a handle on that and communication feels difficult, that's going to make a lot of your relationships like just not feel good. And you might feel like you're being pushed and pulled all day. You might feel like you're taking things personally. You might feel like reactive all the time. And that just is not fun, right? It's like not a fun place to be in. And so these very tangible skills of being able to sit with your emotions is so, so powerful, especially when you're highly sensitive. And it really allows you to cut through all the stories and be able to express yourself in relationships and really get across clearly what you need, who you are, how someone else can support you, asking others how you can be helpful to them. It completely changes the game in your relationships. So I'm going to encourage you, if this is landing for you, just to go back and ask yourself some of these questions, check in and notice, like, how can I bring some of these inquiries into my body and ask my body what's going on and start to build up that relationship between your mind and your body. If you need some help with this, I do have a mini course. It's an audio course. It's in the show notes. It's all about how you can build better boundaries and have better relationships. There are some guided practices and teachings and some writing prompts that help you get clear on your needs, and then a specific guided meditation that will take you through a process to help you process a big emotion or something that you're moving through so that you can get to a place of more clarity and just feel more confident expressing your needs so you can communicate them in your relationships. And if you are looking for personalized support to really help you recognize and shift the way maybe perhaps early childhood wounds or trauma are impacting your current relationship, then definitely reach out to me over email, or you can DM me on Instagram and we can discuss like my approach and how I work with clients. And I'd be happy to chat more with you about that. So I hope some of these suggestions were helpful, and just the way that I think about this was helpful to you, especially if you have been struggling with really saying what you think or how you feel in an important relationship. And I would love to hear from you if you have anything you want to share around this. As always, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you the next time. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of the Transform Your Relationship podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to help more people find us so they can transform their relationships too. As a thank you, every month, we'll pick one winner to receive a free 45-minute one-on-one somatic coaching session with me to explore and gain clarity around a relationship challenge. And if you know somebody who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share and help me reach more highly sensitive women who want to experience richer, more connected relationships.